everyone, and welcome back to my circle. I'm Kamari Creative, and I'm so glad you are here. On this episode of Poet Chats, I had the honor of interviewing Christina Brown, the author of Girl Teeth, which is actually releasing very soon. I hope you all support that. She is a fantastic poet based out of Long Beach, California. She has so many amazing things going on. You're going to want to find out. Make sure you stay tuned. As I mentioned before, this interview is shot straight through. It's best if you enjoy it as a podcast. It's for your work from home life or commuting in traffic because traffic sucks and we all need something to listen to. I hope you all enjoy this and thank you so much for being here. Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Real good. Thank you so much for being a part of POETCHATS.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
I've never met a person before, so nice to meet you.
I know. It is nice to meet you, and I love your hair. It's so pretty. I love the color.
Thank you.
Definitely.
My best friend dyes it in her kitchen.
Oh, nice. Those are the best hairstyles that come in the kitchen. I know all about that. So,
yeah.
So for those that are meeting you for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Christina. I'm currently a graduate student, which is a whole thing. So I'm getting a master's in American Studies.
Nice.
I also write poetry, obviously. I do work with Fighting with Poetry in Long Beach. So I'm in their anthology, working on some projects with them. And we get to go do performances at different kinds of events, stuff like that, kind of share our work. I dance also, and I think that my poetry, my writing, and dance definitely inform each other. I write a lot about my body and sort of making sense of that. So those two arts really work together for me. I'm a Taurus, which is very important. And allergic to meat, which is interesting. And yeah. And I do a lot of my academic work is mostly in strange things like sex robots and lizard people.
Cool. That's really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. So I'm wondering, I'm curious to maybe change the format of the show. I usually have poetry shared at the end, but would you be willing to share one now? And then I ask you questions and you share one at the end?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, speaking of sex robots and Fighting with Poetry, I thought it'd be fun to share one of the poems from our anthology.
Nice.
I love this book. I believe in it 100%. Even if I wasn't in it, I would still believe in it. It's available on Amazon. You can also buy it from any of the poets. Let me find myself. So a lot of my master's work has been at sort of the intersection between gender and technology, specifically representation of women and like feminine gender representation. And I did a big project on sex robots last semester. Yes, last semester, 2 semesters ago. It's all a blur. But it was really difficult for me emotionally in a way that academic work normally isn't, because I was really having to confront a lot of violence, a lot of like representational violence and representational desire that's sort of terrifying. So I wrote a poem about it, and this poem is actually in the final paper. And I like it because it helped me work through something, so I'll share it with you. Called Why I Care About Sex Robots. It is 2017 and Samantha the sex robot is on display at a conference for the first time. In minutes, her body is destroyed by tech bro fingers hungry for the future, and today, her programmers decided she would not scream. She would not scream. The professor asks what we think, and my dinner jumps to my throat because it is 2016, and Brock Turner only spent 3 months in prison for raping a drunk girl whose body he saw as passive object fantasy. It is 2015, and I work the night shift. My sister, who loves me very much, tells me the knife I carry in my boot isn't big enough anymore. It is 2012, and I am choosing avocados at the grocery store when a man in a polo shirt has to stop to tell me that I would be prettier if I smiled. It is 2014, and my 4th floor apartment does not have a fire escape. Still, my roommates lock every window because it is 2011, and the boy says he might like to date me. It's just that like I talk too much. It is 2013 and my niece's first word is no, and I vow to never take that from her because it is 2009 and us girls are trying to knit sticky armor for each other out of lip gloss tubes. It is 2018 and I am a woman still learning to live in a body I have only ever known as battlefield. Women still go to the bathroom in pairs because when I was 16, a man was in there waiting for me. Before I could even try, he said, remember, good girls don't scream.
Wow. Sum it up. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, wow. How long have you been writing poetry?
That's a hard question to answer. I wrote a lot of poetry when I was like an angsty 13-year-old. I feel like that's like when a lot of us get started. Did it in high school a little bit too, but I sort of took a break in undergrad, so like 18 to 20, and sort of focused on fiction and like academic writing. And I would say that I came back to poetry probably about a year and a half ago. And I sort of found that I had a different voice, having stepped away.
And how would you define your voice, and maybe what was the process you've taken to find your voice?
I think a lot of it has been about sort of removing pressure from myself. I tend to be very product driven, very like this piece must be perfect of whatever I'm doing, which is very capitalist and very unproductive when you're trying to create something. So I think when I think about developing my voice, I think about that I want to have something to say, and it's okay if what I have to say is a question. And it's okay if I don't always know the answer to the questions that I'm asking, but sort of being truthful and vulnerable in the process and as a process, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you maybe advise a new writer, or maybe one that's been writing for a little bit but hasn't found their voice yet? How would you advise them to find their voice?
I think it starts with writing about the things that you care about and the things that you think about. Because I know a lot of people are like, I want to write poems, but I don't know anything about flowers or like whatever they've seen poetry to be. And I've heard great poems about tampons, and you know, half the world knows about tampons. So I think for me, it starts as a reflective practice in whatever format that's comfortable. So for some people, writing a poem, even for myself, sometimes I'm like, writing a poem about this sounds intimidating, but just journaling about it in like my notes app on my iPhone doesn't sound intimidating. That just sounds like I'm a person who has thoughts. Or drawing a picture or using a sticky note or whatever. Kind of starting from there, and starting from a place of what am I thinking about, what's sitting with me, you know. And I think that all of that answers the question of like, what do you have to say that no one else has to say? But it sort of, for me, removes the pressure of like, I have to say something original, because you have that in you already. It's just about framing it in a way that's comfortable and productive.
Yes. Thank you for that. I see a viewer says great advice. I needed to hear that. Definitely.
Thank you.
I did too. So I've been asking every poet on here the $1 million question. So according to Mermaid Zena, am I saying it right, or is it Christina? Just
I don't know. I say Mermaid Xena, but that's like super not like accurate to what the spelling is. I just like Xena because like when I was a child, I remember Christina Aguilera has Xena on the back.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So my first email address is like Xena at SBC Global or whatever it is. Yeah. So you can say whatever you want.
Okay. Well, for Mermaid Xena, I like that too. What is the job of the poet?
It's a great question. I've been thinking about that today. An advice that I've gotten multiple times from a lot of different really awesome poets that helps me a lot is to remember that your job is not to relate or to be relatable. Your job is to be understood. And I think sometimes when I'm writing, at least I want to say we, because I'm sure other people will feel this way too. Yeah. I find myself worrying like, what if no one else feels this way? And I logically know that like, you know, there's a million people, or more than 1 million people in the world. But so many people, like someone has to feel the same way that I do. But even if maybe someone doesn't, that's okay. Even like with the Sexerboat Poem, I found myself being afraid of like, most people are not in American studies programs, like obsessively looking at sex robot, like marketing. So are people gonna get it? But even like, I've done that poem in Canada, and I always ask like, you know, who here knows about Sexerbots? And everyone raised their hand. I'm like, oh, thank God, people remember, or people know. So I think it's sort of about just putting your words or putting your emotions and thoughts and images into something that people can access, and whether or not they see themselves in the details isn't up to you. But I do think the specific poems that you think nobody relate to are the ones that people tend to see themselves in the most.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I see on your page that you have tagged Pear-Shaped Press.
Yes.
So tell me about that. Is that your press or?
Yeah. So two of my best friends from undergrad, we started this really small press. Super new. We're actually not really going to start our first project until this summer. So it's myself, my friend Megan Mimiaga, and then our other friend Stephanie Anderson. They're both awesome. They're actually both finishing their masters this semester. So Stephanie put together the website for us, and she was so excited. We're like, let's just launch it. You know, we're not ready yet, but it's fine. Let the world know. So we have a website, and we have, you know, Instagram and everything. Nothing too crazy happening on there yet, but this summer there will be. We already have a couple calls for submissions up. We're looking to put together an anthology of a feminist cookbook. So it was Stephanie's idea. I think it's brilliant. So kind of specifically looking for women, you know, like gender non-binary, people of color, traditionally underrepresented people. We're like a feminist press run by women, but of course, like we all gotta be in it together. So looking for recipes that have been passed down from generation to generation. And along with the story of like, you know, my mom taught me this, or my dad used to make this for us every Tuesday morning, or whatever it is. And sort of capturing like, celebrating like a part of femininity, and celebrating sort of caring for yourself and the people that you love. And we're also putting together, and that'll hopefully be a physical book. And then we're also putting together a teenager's guide to feminism.
Cool.
That one I'm really excited about. I'm excited about both of them, of course. But that one is going to be like poetry and sort of short stories and memoir, and just advice for teens trying to figure out like, you know, gender and navigating the world, specifically in this era, but I think in any era. You're always going to be confronted with difficult situations when you're young. And sort of a space for us to talk to young people. I mean, I'm a young person too, but sort of like opening up the conversation between generations, which I think is something that's often hard to do. So those are our goals.
Yes, I love those goals. Those are amazing goals, and I think they're so relevant and needed. And so the call for submissions is on the Instagram now, or mostly on the website?
It's on the website, yeah, and the website is in our bio.
So everyone watching now or on the replay, make sure you follow first Mermaid Xena and Pear-Shaped Press and submit. You know, that is important work. I'm already thinking of, you know, different people that I know should be a part of that. So for those that are watching, make sure you spread the word and help, you know, support this press, because usually presses, they go on because of, you know, community support. So definitely just follow.
Community is a big deal for us. We're right now, obviously none of us are paid, and we're all just, you know, friends trying to make it come together. So we have a blog, we have a couple posts up, making sure that, because I mean, we're 3 cis white women putting this project on right now, and the first thing we want to do when we have like any money is like hire people from different backgrounds, other women that we know, to both diversify our readers and diversify the people putting the work together. I think that's like extremely important. And also to diversify our skills, because like I do not know anything about business. I have a degree in creative writing, so I can edit a book, but I don't know how to get a business license. So there are those gaps. So everything that we do from the beginning, we want to make sure that we're getting feedback, that our community is involved. So we would love any submissions, any feedback.
That's amazing. So with all of this you have going on, the press, and then, you know, all that comes with that, and then you're getting your master's.
Yes.
And you're a poet. How do you balance that all? Because, you know, like I was talking with the poet last night, she uses both sides of her brain. And so I'm like, how do you do that? Because most people are just creative and like just that's it. But it sounds like you have a good balance between the two. So how do you do that?
It's a little messy. I have a color-coded monthly calendar on a whiteboard of like, you know, pink is poetry, blue is school, purple is work-related. And I try to sort of look at every week and be like, okay, am I doing something creative? Am I meeting my deadline? That helps me just in terms of like meeting my bare minimum needs. But honestly, a lot of my work ends up informing the other sort of parts of my life. I end up writing about a lot of things that I study. I end up sort of, you know, both, not even both, all the things I do involve research and the writing process. So it's messy. I often don't sleep enough.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm so lucky because I love everything that I do. And even if that means I'm sleeping, you know, less than I want to be, or that I don't always have time to, I don't know, watch Netflix or whatever I would like to do to relax. Yeah, I just love everything that I do, and I'm lucky to get to do all of it right now. I do try to kind of plan ahead and be like, I'm going to need to sleep enough on Saturday. I'm going to need to, you know, see my mom or whatever it is I need to do. So it's a lot of intense planning, and I'm also surrounded by a lot of really wonderful people who relate to my lifestyle. I can see Alyssa's here. Alyssa and I will hang out at a coffee shop, and she'll grade papers and I'll do homework, and we'll like work for half an hour, and then we'll like chat for 10 minutes, and then we'll work.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really wonderful to be around people who either are doing all the things that I'm doing or doing a few of them, whatever, and who respect the hustle and who have a place in it.
See, I need to move to OC because I need to be a part of that coffee group because that's cool.
Yeah.
I got a question in that says, how do you transition between academic work and creative work, or do you put creativity in your? I need to, you know how the question like it cuts off. So can you type in the rest of that question? I hate that it doesn't show the rest, or maybe it should stop us, you know, so we can know when to stop typing in. Instagram needs to get that together. So I don't know what the second part of that question is, but maybe you can answer the first part, which is, how do you transition between academic work and creative work?
Again, it's often a very messy process. And I'm also very lucky because actually the chair of my thesis committee, his background is in creative writing. So he's very understanding of like, we have similar creative processes. Why is it processes?
Whatever you want it.
So when I'm working on my thesis, I'm like, I mean, I have to approach this from a creative standpoint, or else I don't want to do it. I have to have my color-coded sticky notes up on a board and pretend that I'm writing like, you know, poetry or whatever. And I get to incorporate a lot of my interests in both fields. So I'm lucky that I'm in a space where they sort of work together and they inform each other. I do find myself, sometimes I'll be in a lecture and then someone will say something, and I'm like, oh, that's a poem. And then I'm like writing a poem and not paying attention to the material. Or sometimes I'll be writing a poem and I'll be like, man, I really like that paper I'm working on needs to have this in it. So, you know, I think they inform each other, but it's also for me been about the color coding and the carving out time for like, you have a half an hour, you're going to write creatively. You're not going to think about women in the 17th century. Think about what you have to do right now. So it's a lot of self-discipline that I am still learning. But also I found a space in American studies where I get to incorporate both. And I get to write. And like I said, the Sexerboat Poem is actually in the final paper that I turned in. I wrote the poem, I showed my professor, and he was like, this is part of the work. This is the research. So yeah, it's really awesome.
So with that discipline, do you have a daily writing routine? If so, what is it?
Depends on the day. I also have a couple of day jobs, which is the whole thing. But I do content writing for one of my main jobs, and it's mostly like medical marketing. So it's a good experience, but it's a writing process, but it's not like as creative as I would like to be, you know. But it's a great job for right now. I love my coworkers. So on the days where I'm there all day, I typically will come home and not really feel like writing because I've just written all day. But, you know, I'll try to like, I've been journaling more, I think, this year. And that's been helping me because I spend a lot of time on my screen for work and for school and for everything. So having like a physical journal and just having a piece of paper that I can write in has been really helpful. But I really have to carve out time. There are some days, I think I write my best sort of creative work like mid-morning, which is not ideal for like adult work schedules because usually I'm at work or something.
Yeah.
But on weekends when I have that time, or you know, when I'm sort of between tasks or between things, I do try to let my friend Becky just had a couple of day jobs. Don't be so modest. Like I have 3. I don't even know. My life.
I mean, I feel like I don't know anybody in LA that just has one job or
That's
one
so
thing that they do. You know,
yeah, you have to.
we're multitasking around here. Well,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And I love what you said about your calendar, about having it color coded, because I was thinking of my calendar. I said, man, it's all red. And I was thinking, that's not a good color. Just
No.
now, it's been like that for years, you know. And I was like, when you said you have blue or whatever the colors you said, I'm like, you know what? That is a lot more pleasant. Like if I had blue as poetry, or, you know, writing time, and yellow is work, not red, you know. Like,
Yeah.
and I always feel anxiety when I open my calendar app. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Everything's urgent.
Everything is urgent. Exactly. Yeah. I need to change that ASAP. And so that really encouraged me to do that. And I think that's a good tip for those, like just using your calendar, color coding, like how you have the whiteboard. I think that is a great way to balance between right brain and left brain, because you write it out and then the color helps you, you know, kind of identify what is needed. So I think that's a great tip.
Thanks. Yeah, it holds me accountable, definitely, because I'll be like, hey, you're doing all poetry this week and you're not writing any of your thesis, so
I wish I had more writing. Mine is just like other things, you know. So that color coding game, that's about to change the game for real.
Yeah, it's new and I highly recommend.
Yes. So can we hear another poem?
Sure. I pulled out a poem that the Sexerboat poem I feel is kind of, it's done. I've written it, you know, I can revisit it, but it feels like a final draft. And this one is a little bit more of a work in progress. But I wanted to share it. I wrote, it's in 2 parts, and I wrote both of them for National Poetry Writing Month.
Nice.
It also doesn't really have a title. Okay. I don't want to be a soft girl. I want to be a sharp girl. Burn your tongue when you try to swallow me whole, girl. Snap your own neck when you try to choke me silent, girl. I want my own tongue to be a knife. Cut the corner of your mouth, girl. Hands like claws enough to crawl out of bad love, girl. I want blades instead of blood. I want all my bones to turn to teeth. I want steel eyelashes. I want titanium hair. I want a cinder block body, heavy and hollow, girl. Weapon enough to crack a bone with nothing of her own to spill. Part 2, Ode to my soft parts. Ode to my stomach on the 10th day in a row I forgot to hold a plank before taking a shower. To my cheeks when I smile. To the rivers I have taught my body to cry. Ode to the women in my family who are sharp-edged and soft-centered. Ode to the vowels in my own first name. Ode to the bruised parts, to the aching and holding. Ode to all of my crushes, to every too fast heartbeat. Ode to my marrow, to every joint I can bend. Ode to the only kind of love I know.
Ooh, fire. That just inspired me. Oh my God. I want still eyelashes and titanium hair too. I want to be a cinder block body. Like, yes, you know, that just really empowered me just now.
Yeah, that was interesting because I shared the poem in 2 different days. I actually hadn't really put them together until yesterday. I recognized the second one as sort of a response to the first one, but I posted them about the same time, and I got a lot of like yes responses on Instagram to the first part, and then like no one said anything about the second part. And I think part of it is that the first part feels more finished. I feel like I've spent more time with it. But I was like, it's also cool that I can cry.
Yeah.
So I put them together because I think a lot of my like sort of emotional work is about accepting all of the parts of me and sort of finding wholeness in the extremes, if that makes sense.
I love that so much. You're amazing. I'm so glad we met.
I know. I want to meet you in person.
I would love that.
Tonight, but I'm in Orange County.
I know hey, you don't have to say it twice because that it should be about 30-45 minutes, but the way this 405 is set up between the hours of 5 to 8.
Yeah. Not going anywhere. No. Yeah. When the Olympics come to LA, I'm gonna move. I'm just gonna leave.
It's over. It's done for sure.
Yeah.
Like, well, I know whenever you guys have your next event, I can for sure come out to that. Because I know you guys do a lot with the Real Poets of OC, which is really dope.
Yeah, that's awesome. A couple of poets in Orange County, Alyssa's one of them. Lady Narrator, Danya is like our sort of, I call her my poetry mom. She's kind of organizing us. But you can anybody can follow us on Instagram, and we post all of our events. And there's a lot of stuff going on in Orange County that I didn't know about until very recently. So we're trying to kind of get people to talk to each other in Orange County and kind of find out about the different events. So there's always stuff going on every single week. It's awesome.
I love it. Thank you so much. This was so rich and very empowering. And I love like all the tips you said. Definitely going to put those into action tonight. And I would definitely look forward to meeting you in person.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And thank you for meeting early too. I appreciate that because I was like, oh my God, like I don't want to like, yes, thank you. Well, best wishes to you and all that you're doing. Pear-Shaped Press, Masters of American class. What did you say? American Studies. Fight Evil with Poetry anthology you got going on, and you got the Real Poets of OC. You have a lot going on.
I do. A full and colorful plate.
A full plate, but it's full of goodness, you know?
Yeah.
A good full plate.
Very lucky. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to meeting you in person one day. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, you have a great night.
You too. Drive safe.